Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how to do this. This is a beautiful stitch. It's a beautiful pattern. It has what's called fillet crochet, where you have the little holes in it. We did some of that when we did the Call the Midwife blanket, and I've got these fans in the middle. It makes such a beautiful, beautiful dainty pattern. It's really pretty. You can do this in any yarn and you can do it in any size. I'm also going to show you how to do the bottom. Now I like the top like this. It's really pretty like this, and I want to do the bottom the same. So one of these rows I'm going to turn my blanket right around when I've finished, and I'm going to put a fan row on here. I'll put a row on here. I'm going to show you how to do that as well. I'll show you how to do this stitch first. Now I haven't finished my blanket, but I've done mine in sets of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 8 blocks done on mine. Now on the end, what I did to have a nice straight edge, I put 2 together, 2 UK treble crochets together and did a space, and at the beginning like this. It also kept the edge nice and straight. So I'm using this Debbie Bliss yarn. It's a double knitting, and this is a 50-gram ball. So to do a blanket, you're going to need about 8 of these little, but you can use any yarn. You can use any yarn you like, any double knitting yarn. So I'm going to show you how to do the pattern using this yarn. I think it'll be lovely and delicate, especially for a newborn baby. So it's chains in sets of 11 plus 8 extra stitches. The extra stitches is to keep the blanket balanced at each end. So I'm going to do my chain in sets of 11. I'll do it so it's got a longer tail, just in case. A lot of the time when people do clusters and they'll say, are you sure that's what the stitch count is, because I don't have enough stitches left, or I've got too many left. A lot of the time it's because they didn't count the cluster that gets stretched right in at the side. So chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Do them in sets of 11 and then add another 8. What we're going to do is a UK treble crochet. We're going to go into the 4th stitch in the chain. 1, don't count the loop on your hook. Count 1, 2, 3 and 4. And you're going to do a treble crochet into that stitch. And those 3 stitches that you missed makes up your other treble. You'll have 2 treble crochets all the way up the edge on each side of your blanket. You're going to chain 1, skip 1 stitch and treble crochet into the next stitch. You're going to skip 2, 1, 2, and into the 3rd stitch you're going to do the cluster. So the cluster is 3 treble crochets, 1 chain and 3 treble crochets into the same stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3. As you can see, it's pulling that next stitch out. So make sure you count that part there when you're counting 1, 2 to skip. That's 3. Chain 1 and put another 3 in. Now remember, that's your next stitch there. That one is your next stitch. You're putting them into this one. So So that's 1, 2 and 3. So see how that has stretched that next stitch. There's the joint there of your next stitch. So that is, we've done our cluster, so we've got to count that stitch there. Make sure you count it. If you don't, you will not have the correct stitch count. You can add stitches with your tail, but sometimes that stitch there just disappears away inside there. So you're going to skip to 1, 2, and you're going to treble crochet into the next stitch. So make sure you pull that cluster back to count that stitch that the cluster loosens. It's going to make it really wide, and you're going to think it's part of that stitch, but it's not. So make sure you count that one there. It's 1, 2, and then treble crochet. Chain 1, skip 1, and treble crochet into the next one. Chain 1, skip 1, and treble crochet into the next one. You need 3 treble crochets in between each fan. I've put 3 treble crochets in mine. So we're going to skip to 1, 2, and do your cluster into the next one. So that's 3 treble crochets, 1, 2, and 3. Now remember, it's going to stretch the stitch right next to it. Chain 1 and put 3 more into the same stitch. 1, 2, starting to stretch my stitch that's next to it, and 3. Now as you can see, it stretched that next stitch again. So you make sure you count that as 1, 2 that you're skipping. Do a treble crochet, chain 1, skip 1 and treble crochet, chain 1, skip 1 and treble crochet. So you'll have 3 treble crochets next. Now the next row is so much easier. You don't have to count, and you don't have to be careful of stretch stitches, because we'll be going into the top of this one, and you won't be having to count skipping 2 stitches. You won't have to do that. We'll be going directly into the top of these stitches, and it's so much easier. We're going to do that all the way along your chain, as long as you make sure on this side that that little stitch gets counted in as your 1 and 2 that you skip, and you're skipping 2 here. No chains here. The only time you're doing a chain is here and here to make your post spaces. So I've got my last cluster done, so I'll make sure that I count that as my stitch, because it stretched that stitch next to it. So 1, 2, I'm going to do a treble crochet into there. I'm going to chain 1, skip 1, and at the end I'm going to put a treble crochet into the next 2 stitches. That's 1 and 2. Catch that in through there. So I'm easy now. It's much more easier to follow. But remember, if you've got some of your stitches squished in there and you've miscounted, just put your hook. If you don't have enough stitches, just put your hook through, pull your yarn through, and make yourself some more chains. And that way you'll have enough. If you leave yourself a long enough tail and you can't see it. So we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. So where you're going next is in the top of your treble crochet. You can see a stitch that goes across here. Don't go into the space where you would traditionally go with a treble crochet. Your stitch is going to go off to the left. Now, as you can see, there is a stitch going across here, right here, this stitch here. That is where you're going to put your hook. You're going to put your hook into that space there, and that's going to keep your stitch. As you can see, you've got two parts of a stitch. That's going to keep your treble crochet on top, right on top of each other. You can see it clearly here. You're not going into that hole there, you're going in under that long little stitch, and you'll be picking up two stitches and do your treble crochet. And that's how I kept my treble crochets right on top of each other. If you don't do that, you'll have your stitch will go off to that side or off to that side on the next row. So yarn over and go in where that little line is. Just push your hook through. It takes an extra fraction of a second, but it keeps your work really pretty. So do your treble crochet. Now we're going to chain one and go across to the next treble crochet. So do a treble crochet on top of that one. This is the row that you'll keep repeating. Now, no chains. You're going to go in to the chain space in your cluster. Where you've done the chain one in your cluster, you're going to do another cluster. That's 3 treble crochets, 1, 2, and 3. Chain one and put another 3 treble crochets into that same space. It's 1, 2, and 3. Now move over to the top of your treble crochet, your first treble. You should have 3 treble crochets like this in between your clusters. You're going straight over to the top of that one. No chain, just do a treble crochet in the top and try and go in where that little line is, in through there. If you go into that hole, your treble crochet will go slightly off to the side. When you do what's called fillet crochet, you need to keep your posts right on top of each other. So now you're going to chain one and go over to your next one. Remember and go in where that little stitch there is. In there. An extra second, but it makes a big difference. Chain one and go into the top of your next one. Then go straight over to your cluster. So the only time you're chaining your one is between these two here. You're only chain one and then do your treble, chain one and do your next treble. That's the only time you do your chain one, is when you're at these trebles to make this little square box pattern. So we've done that one and we're going right over to the cluster again, into the middle of the cluster, and we're going to place another cluster in here. 3 treble crochet, 1 chain and 3 treble crochet to make the cluster. That's 2 and 3. Chain 1 and 3 more treble crochets into that same part. 1, 2 and 3. Now jump right over, miss these three, and we're going to put a treble crochet in top of this one. We're going to chain one and put a treble crochet in the top of this one, chain one and put a treble crochet in the top of this one. So go straight over to your next treble crochet, miss the fan out, and remember and go into that little line, not that little hole space. You're going in where the line is. There's a little stitch there, and that's where you're going in there. Keeps it all nice and straight. Chain one, treble crochet into the top of the next one, chain one and treble crochet into the next one. Skip the rest, and you're going to put a cluster in the top of this one. 1, 2 and 3. Chain one and finish your cluster. And 3. Now go straight over to your trebles, right over to this one, no chain, just go straight over and do a treble crochet into the top of that one. Now chain one to do your little boxes, treble crochet, chain one and do your last treble crochet. No chain, just move right over to the top of the cluster. 1, 2 and 3. Chain one and 1, 2 and 3 on to that same part. No chains. Now over here you've got your two together, so you're going to do treble crochet into this one, chain one and then do a treble crochet and a treble crochet at the end. Keeps your edge nice and straight. So yarn over and go in to that treble crochet. Now don't go into the hole, remember, and catch that little line of that stitch like this. You can see it just there. Pull through, chain one and do 2 treble crochets in your last 2 stitches. It's 1 and 1 into the top of that chain of 3. Now I did 2 at the end just to keep it all nice and straight at the end. I've kept it so you get a nice edge. Now we will come back and put a cluster in here and do our treble crochet with our chains and then a cluster just to make the bottom the same as the top. Now that is what you do, you repeat that. Make sure you've still just got 3 posts in between your cluster, and it's only these 2 holes here that gets a chain. So it's treble crochet, chain 1, treble crochet, chain 1 and treble crochet, then go straight into the top of your cluster. So we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3 and turn your work. So straight into the top of this one, you can see that little stitch there, into that little space. Keep it all nice on top of each other. So there's no chain between these first 2, and there's no chain between the last 2. So we're going to chain 1 and do a treble crochet on top of that one. Chain 1 and then treble crochet on top of that treble there. Stuck on here. We're going to go straight over and do a cluster in this space. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and 1, 2, and 3. Skip all this out and do a treble crochet on top of this one. Chain 1, treble crochet into the top of the next one, chain 1, and treble crochet into the top of the next one. Then go right over to the cluster. So once you've got your blanket done to the size or length that you want, I'm going to show you how to do the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I've turned my blanket upside down, and I'm going to go into the corner, and I'm just going to follow the pattern the way I've been doing it. I'll put a treble crochet in here, one in here, I'll chain 1, go over to here, and then do a cluster. So I've got my crochet hook, and I'm just going to put it into the bottom of this treble crochet here. And to pull it through, I'll keep a tail to sew in. I'll sew that in, and I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. Now into the top, we'll call this the top now. Into the top of this one, I'm going to put a treble crochet. Just find your way into the bottom of this, which is now the top, just to keep it nice and neat, because this is the bottom of your foundation chain. So that gives me my 2 at the beginning. I'm going to chain 1, skip this little space here, and put a treble crochet into the bottom of this one here. Then I'm going to move over to this big stitch where the cluster is, and I'm going to put my cluster in. So that's 3 treble crochets, 1, 2, and that's 3. To chain 1 and put another 3 into there. 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to move over to this treble here and put 1 in there. Treble crochet into that one. Now my chain 1, my treble crochet into the top of the next one, to chain 1 and a treble crochet into the top of the next one. Then move to the cluster stitch, and that's what I'm going to do all the way along. So I've went all along the bottom following the pattern, and this is the top. I've still got to work on my top, so this is what the bottom likes. So I've got 1 treble crochet just to put into this last stitch down here. I will stitch in my ends, and then I'm going to cut my yarn and just pull it through. Now I'll stitch those 2 ends into the blanket. I'll put it back up this way. Now it's rattling a bit because that's my stitch marker. I've still got some work to do on the length of this, but I've showed you how to finish the bottom, and look how pretty it is. Once you've got your length and the bottom is actually the same as the top, it's really pretty doing the bottom like that, and it comes out so pretty. Look at that. So thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and if you click on the bell icon, YouTube will tell you when I put up another tutorial. So until the next time, happy crafting, and I'll see you all again soon. So I'm going off to add my next ball of yarn and finish my Moses blanket.